Hello everybody, let's understand the complete English text of the essay Public Transport in London and Delhi, written by Nirad C. Chaudhuri. Life in London, even in the most crowded streets, seemed like a film of pre-talkie days. Nirad C. Chaudhuri tells us his experiences of London and Delhi. First he is talking about London. He says that in London, even in the most crowded streets, there was silence. And this silence reminded him of the films of pre-talkie days, means when there were the silent movies. I had an uncanny sensation when I saw unending streams of people going along Oxford Street and heard no sound. He says that I did not hear any sound even in Oxford Street where there were long lines of people, and this gave him strange sensation, means feeling. As they moved into the underground stations, they looked like long lines of ants going into their holes. He tells us that the people over there, as they were going in the underground stations, means underground railway stations, they looked like, they were looking as the long lines of ants as they were going into their holes. When after living in the bazaars of India for years, I saw a sight like that, it was only natural that I should paraphrase Pascal and cry out, the eternal silence of these infinite crowds frightens me. Chaudhuri tells us that he had the experience of the bazaars of India, where people always keep talking about. And for the first time when he went to London, then it was natural for him when he saw the silence, and he recalled the lines of Pascal, who cried out, the eternal silence of these infinite crowds, means there were so many crowds and they were always silent. They were not talking, and these things frightened me. This way Chaudhuri says that I was also frightened. I met the same silence when from the streets I went into the pubs or restaurants. Both can be crowded at lunchtime, but I heard no conversation. He says that that scene was not only at the railway station, underground stations, that was in pubs also, in restaurants also, and even at the lunch time when there are always people keep talking, but in London I saw no conversation among them. In India, on the contrary, such places would be buzzing or even booming with talk. On the other hand, if we see in India, such places, public places, are always booming with talks. And speaking of the clubs, though regarded as centers of social life, they are perhaps the most silent places of all. Whereas in London we see even in social life, in the clubs, which are the centers, but even there also you would find the most silent places of all. One evening, when dining at a club, I tried in my innocence to open a conversation across the table, and I admired the skill with which the intrusion was fended off, without the slightest suggestion of discourtesy. Chaudhuri says that in the beginning, in London, when dining at a club, when I was not knowing, and I started a conversation across the table, but the other person fended me off, without causing me any disrespect, and this was the style in London. But Englishmen have heard so much about their habits of silence from foreigners that they will see nothing new in my experience. And whereas my case is concerned, I was highly surprised to see them silent. But they were not surprised because they were used to, because always foreigners knowing about their habit. They have heard the comment mostly from Frenchmen and other Europeans, and so can have no conception of the contrast they present to our ways in India. Actually, they are totally different from our Indian styles, but the people of France, people of other European countries, they are all familiar with their lifestyle. It is this contrast rather than the general fact of the silence which I wish to bring home. And as it happens, I am particularly qualified to do so. Chaudhuri says that now I have the experience, exposure of the life in London and the silence of those countries, and with our country, this is what I want to bring home, means this is what I want to tell you about. Because never having had a car, I have always travelled by bus or tram, than which there are no better places to observe the public behavior of a nation. Here he says that while I was in India, I had no car. Never having had a car, And that's why I used to travel by bus or tram, a type of train. Then, because there is no such better place as these public places in buses or tram where we can see public behavior. This way I know the public behavior of our country, that means India. The transport system of Delhi, which is owned by the government and in which I have gone about for more than 15 years, is very illuminating in this respect. Chaudhuri tells us that he used to use the transport system of Delhi, which is owned by the government, and here he has used it for 15 years. That's why he has very good exposure of Delhi public life. In the buses of Delhi, all of us make use of one another for bodily comfort. Chaudhuri tells us that in the buses of Delhi, which are generally crowded, for our body comfort, we use each other's body. In northern India, people have very great difficulty in keeping steady in moving vehicles, and therefore they lean against one another or put their arms round fellow passenger. Here what happens in crowded buses, as they can't keep stable, and because as the vehicles move they find it very difficult to stand steady. That's why they lean against, means take the support of other passengers, or even sometimes they put their arms round a fellow passenger so that they may easily travel. Nobody is so ill-natured as to mind being used as a cushion, and if there is anyone with a wholly alien notion of private ownership in respect of his body objects, Chaudhuri tells that in the buses of Delhi, nobody is so ill-natured, means all accommodate. In case if somebody objects, they think that it is their private ownership and they don't allow anybody to take their sport. He is asked in offended tones, what harm is there in it? You are not a woman. Again, if anyone wants to know the time, first thing is that in angry way, in angry tone they are asked, why are you not allowing to take the sport? You are not a woman. If had there been woman, only she could object, and being male, you can't think of objecting anybody. And apart from it, if somebody wants to know the time and has not got a watch, he simply takes up the left hand of another passenger and looks at his wristwatch. This way, if somebody wants to know the time, after lifting the wristwatch of another passenger, they can watch the time. I wear mine on the underside and therefore I have my wrist twisted. Here Chaudhuri tells that he always wears his watch inside, and that's why many times his wrist gets twisted, because people always see the time themselves by lifting the wrist of other passengers. The buses are also full of conversation, not only on public topics but also on embarrassingly private ones, and not only between acquaintances but also between people who have never met before. Chaudhuri tells us that here you can see the conversations in the public buses, even on the public and private topics. And here the talks are not only between known people, they are between strangers also who have never met before. Among the former, the jokes are loud and hearty, and they are also permissible between total strangers. Chaudhuri tells us that first category of public topics, there are the jokes, and which are hearty, and they are permissible even among the strangers. He gives the example, one day a fellow passenger looked at my large solar topi and remarked, he says that I was wearing solar topi, and other passenger remarked at my solar topi that it was heavier than my whole body, and when I replied that it was no bigger than his turban, he said that he hoped I was not offended at his joke. Other passenger said that my solar topi was heavier than even my body. Or then when I replied that no, it was not bigger than your turban, then he said that I hope that you are not offended, means you are not angry with my joke. Another day, I even had an anxious inquiry about my health. Chaudhuri gives another example of another day of another incident, and he says that there was an inquiry about my health. In the hot season, I sometimes get an irritation at the back of my neck, especially because I wear a collar and tie. even then, and this makes me jerk my head and even perk it like a bird. He tells that in hot season he feels the irritation sometimes at the back of his neck. Here Chaudhuri is telling, and he tells that because he generally wears collar and tie, and this makes him to jerk his head, sometimes perk it like a bird. Last summer I had an attack of this, and when traveling in the bus. Last summer he says that I had the irritation because of hot season. I suddenly heard the gentleman sitting next to me asking me in English, and because of this irritation, one gentleman sitting next to me asked in English, is it habit or is it disease? He wanted to know that why are you jerking or perking? Is it a habit or it is a disease? As I was somewhat surprised by the question and could not at first understand what it was about, he repeated the query. As Chaudhuri says that I could not think of that anybody could ask such question, and that's why he repeated the query. I asked in my turn, is what habit or disease? Because he wanted to be sure that this question has been asked from him. Then the gentleman mimicked me exactly and said, this. I was bound in common politeness to reply. After confirmation, Chaudhuri says that in politeness I had to reply. I suppose it's a habit. Chaudhuri said that I said that it's a habit. I also think so. I thought so too, he rejoined. The other passenger said that I was also thinking so. You have done this too many times and it has now become a habit, and habit, as you know, is second nature. He said that it becomes our second nature as you have done it so many times and it has become your habit. So it is. I said in an embarrassed manner. Chaudhuri says that I was so embarrassed. I said that yes, it is my habit. The passengers also help one another about the best way to get to a destination, because not infrequently the conductor has no clear idea of the topography of Delhi and they often give contradictory directions, each maintaining that his is the right one. Chaudhuri gives here another examples. In Delhi generally we see people are not knowing about the direction for their destination, and for this purpose conductors are not knowing and other passengers help us, and generally sometimes they give contradictory directions also, and every passenger wants to show that whatever the directions they have given is the right one. So far as newspaper reading is concerned, the fellow passengers never snatch away anybody's paper, but they take the pages he is not reading in the most polite manner and distribute them among themselves. Chaudhuri gives another example of newspaper. Sometimes a passenger is reading the newspapers, but the fellow passengers, means other passengers, they don't snatch away the paper, just they take away all the other pages which that passenger is not reading, and then they distribute other pages among themselves for reading. These are, however, scrupulously returned. After reading the newspapers carefully, all pages of the papers are returned. Books ear often tugged at. He gives the example of books also. He says that one day a fellow passenger pulled hard at an edition of the Gita I was holding in my hand. Chaudhuri says that in my hand I was holding the book Gita and some other passenger pulled it hard, and when I did not let go but objected. When I was holding it firmly, I did not let go and the other passenger objected. He said angrily, you have got a holy book in your hand and you are behaving like this. I don't want your book. And he did make a pariah of me. This way angrily he said that after even having holy book you are behaving this way. You are behaving like this. He said angrily that I don't want your book. And this way the other passenger made me pariah, because he made me very strange because I did not let the book go. I have the habit of leaving my seat and waiting at the door of the bus so as to be able to get down as soon as it comes to the stop, instead of keeping it waiting as most of us do. Here Chaudhuri gives another example also. He tells about himself. He says that I have the habit of leaving my seat and I start waiting at the door before my bus comes to the stop so that immediately I may get down. But if I talk of other passengers, what they do, they keep waiting in their seat generally until the bus stops over there. But when the others see me doing this, they cry out in their anxiety, "Please have patience." Some even catch hold of my coattails or grip the arm to prevent me from moving. And Chaudhary tells that other passengers, they stop me from doing this and they cry out, "Please have patience," means you don't stand in advance. Some even catch hold of my coattails. Even some people pull my cloth, means coattail. They want to stop me, that I should not stand before the bus reaches the bus stop. Or sometimes they grip my arm also, means they hold my arm. They prevent me from doing so, means standing while bus is moving. They also help in more exceptional circumstances. Here Chaudhary gives another example of fellow passengers that they help also in exceptional circumstances. One day I found that I had only one bad rupee with me and the conductor would not take it. Chaudhary tells that one day he had one bad rupee and conductor was not ready to take it. In such a situation, it is the custom with us to appeal to the general will of the passengers. Chaudhary says that when the conductor does not accept the bad rupee, then we want to have the support of other passengers. As I did not do that, a fellow passenger snatched the coin from my hand, looked at it and said, "It is bad, but don't worry, I am going to exchange it for a good one." There was another passenger who snatched the coin from my hand. And after looking at it, he said that no problem, I would give you the new one. And he took out a 1 rupee note, gave it to me and put my bad rupee in his pocket. I so amazed that I could not prevent him. Chaudhary tells how he gave him one new 1 rupee and he took his bad rupee in his pocket. All sorts of other incidents happen which make the bus in Delhi a microcosm of our nation life. This way Chaudhary says that Delhi becomes the microcosm of our nation life because all types of incidents happen here in Delhi, and that's why in Delhi we can come to know about the whole India. On one occasion, I saw a hysterical young woman trying to commit suicide by jumping out of a window and being pulled back by her husband. Here Chaudhary gives another example of a young woman. She was very angry and she was trying to commit suicide by jumping out of the window, but her husband pulled her back. There are quarrels, sometimes verbal, sometimes involving the limbs, not only between a passenger and another passenger or a passenger and the conductor, but also between the conductor and the driver. Here Chaudhary tells that there are such quarrels, and sometimes quarrels are verbal, only in words, or sometimes there is a fight, and sometimes it is between passenger and another passenger, or sometimes passenger and conductor, or sometimes even between conductor and driver. One day the two quarreled and came to blows, and then the driver got down in a huff and went off into Edward Park to lie down on the grass. Here Chaudhary gives the example of the quarrel between conductor and driver. Once driver got down the bus and he went to Edward Park, and there he lie down on the grass and he refused to drive the bus. He did not come back until the whole body of passengers had shouted their entreaties to him for some time. He says that when many passengers came and they all requested the driver, only then driver came to drive the bus. What takes place at the stops is even more out of the ordinary by Western standards, and I shall relate only one of my experiences. Here Chaudhary relates one more experience. He says that even at the bus stops, whatever happens, it is not ordinary if we judge it from Western point of view. It should be remembered that in the capital of India, the buses on certain routes come at intervals of 20 minutes or more, and that they are also irregular. Chaudhary tells that on some routes, the buses come after 20 minutes or more time, and even they are not regular. I was waiting for my bus on one of these routes, and there came along an elderly gentleman with his family. Here Chaudhary tells that one of the routes he was waiting, and then there one elderly gentleman came. He was with his family. He asked me if he could go to Red Fort from that stop, and when I said that he could, he thanked me profusely and gave the information that he was a visitor to the town. When Chaudhary was waiting there, and that elderly gentleman asked him that he wanted to go to Red Fort, and he wanted to know the route, and Chaudhuri told him the route and he was very thankful, and then he told that he had come to Delhi as a visitor. He wanted to see the town. He pointed to a young girl in the party and said, "That is my daughter. She is in her BA class and I am thinking now of her marriage." He gives the information of the girl who was his daughter and she was studying in BA. Then he introduced his son to me too. After that he went on to say that they were coming from the house of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru where they had his darshan, that is to say were present at his ceremonial appearance before visitors. That elderly gentleman told Chaudhuri about his son also, about the place they were coming from. He told that they had the darshan of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. Continuing in this communicative vein, he informed me that the last time he had come to Delhi was 2 years ago, and that, he added with a shy smile, was over a lawsuit with his father. That elderly gentleman told him about his last visit also, that was 2 years back, because at that time there was a lawsuit with his father. I could hardly remain indifferent to the raising of such a topic. Seeing that I was interested, he went to the trouble of explaining the whole affair. When that elderly gentleman saw Chaudhuri that he was not indifferent, now he was listening carefully, then he started telling everything about the whole trouble, because 2 years back, for which lawsuit, what was the reason that he came to Delhi. Of course, he spoke throughout in English, and I shall give his exact words so far as I can remember them. Here Chaudhuri is telling that that elderly gentleman told everything in English and I would tell you everything exactly. You see, he began, "My mother died some years ago and my father, who was old at that time, took a concubine." That gentleman told that some years back his own mother died, but his father took a concubine with whom he started to have the relation with. She was another woman. My brothers and I did not mind this at all, but after some time he brought this lady into the house which we could not pass over. That gentleman told that my brothers and I objected because my father brought that lady, that concubine, into the house and which we could not ignore. So my brothers and I went up to him and said, "Revered father, you cannot do that." They all requested, that elderly gentleman and his brother, to their father, that you can't keep this woman in this home. You may, of course, associate with the lady, but you cannot bring her into our ancestral house where we, your sons, live with our children. My brothers and I objected, my father, that he can't bring that lady in that home because we are all married and our children would get bad impression. That's why she is not allowed here in this house. Upon this my father got very angry and shouted, "Nothing doing. I shall disinherit the whole lot of you." This way their father was very angry and he said that he won't give any property to any of his sons. We replied that he could not do that either. So it went to the courts. But the judge advised me to settle the matter out of court. This way they had to come to court, but here the judge also told that you need to settle it out of the court. At this point the bus came into view and I prepared to move. Here Chaudhuri tells that after listening to his story, then bus came in the appearance and he was ready to go. The gentleman surprised me, however, by asking for my name and address. That elderly gentleman asked Chaudhuri about his name and his address. Upon my inquiring the reason, he replied that he wanted to send me some mangoes from his own orchard and that they were very good. I replied, occasion for it. That elderly gentleman wanted to send Chaudhuri mangoes from his own orchard, but Chaudhuri wanted to know the reason for it. "Thank you very much, but there is really no occasion for it." Chaudhuri said that really there is no occasion, that's why thank you and no need to send. "No sir," he rejoined with great warmth of feeling, "it is no trouble whatever. There is no problem at all for me and I would be happy to send you the mangoes. You have given me the pleasure of your company and conversation and I want to show you my gratitude for it." That elderly gentleman said that I am happy with your company and the conversation we had and just I want to express my thanks for the same. but the bus had come along and I had to jump into it without being able to bring the matter to a more graceful occasion. Here Chaudhuri says that in the meantime bus came close and that's why I had to jump into the bus and there was no time to end the conversation in a graceful way. It is this comedy humane, this large-hearted wiping out of the distinction between public and private affairs. This way Chaudhary tells that public and private affairs, how there is the distinction and really large-hearted. It is comedy humane means it is very good to see, experience these things. This craving for sympathy in widest commonality spread that make us recoil from the dreariness of the public behavior of the English people. This way, Indian system is far better because here it is the commonality and there is a sympathy, wide understanding, talks. Whereas if we see the English society, London, there is dreariness, sad, it is not charming, it becomes very dull. This way, Indian system is far better than the British system. Thank you.